cat, I'd stretch. If I was a horse, I'd kick. If I was a bird, I'd peck a worm and make it squirm. If I was a lion, I would kill that cub that I had born. And when its eyes my claws had torn, I'd toss my head and laugh, because I knew that I was free. When I am free, don't shake your head. I know I'm dead.
She was a most attractive girl because she was intelligent, she was insightful, she was loving, she was responsive. And her anger was genuine as her love was genuine. And she had a high sense of justice in many ways. She would say things like, I know I'm awful and I know he's being naughty, but you ought to be kind to him. She was well aware of other people's difficulties as well as her own. She was acutely sensitive to other people's feelings. And she had the kind of longing for what was good that mobilized one's feeling for her. She was a child who touched one very immediately and very deeply.
Gail Parsons was only 19 when she died, certain that no one loved her, certain no one cared whether she lived or not. All of us, not just those close to her, share the blame for her death. They found her body in a derelict basement off the Thames embankment. When Gail retreated here from the world she believed had no place for her, the woman who knew her best, Mrs. Nancy David, had feared the worst. A police message proved her right. Gail Parsons, young heroin addict, was dead.
Oh, that's terrible. Is this where she was?
This is where she was found.
Oh, it's horrible, isn't it?
Gail Parsons never had a chance. As a baby, she was unwanted. Her mother put her into a children's home when she was only 6 months old, and from then on there was no lasting link with the one woman children need most, a mother. She grew up looked after by one substitute mother after another. She posed readily for the occasional institutional photograph, but at an age when most children are assured of love, young Gail had to fight for her share of affection in a children's home. What she liked best as a little girl were those occasions when she had the chance to be with her mother on a rare outing together. Gail was proud at moments like this when her mother stood beside her. Most of the time, young Gail lived with 250 other boys and girls, separated for one reason or another from their parents, and put away in one of Britain's biggest welfare institutions, Beecholme, a kind of children's town, offering as much help and hope as this kind of artificial life can muster. The one man in her life, she was illegitimate and never knew her father, was the principal of Beecholme, Geoffrey Banner. Did he try to get the mother and child together again outside the institution?
Oh, all the time. And certainly after she'd reached us at the age of 9 for the first time, this was happening all the time. I interviewed the mother regularly, and one tried to adjust the mother's attitude to the child so that they could come together. There was not a great deal of real contact between them.
What do you mean by adjusting the mother's attitude?
Well, the mother was unrealistic about the child. She was much more concerned with superficial things like the way she spoke, the way she ate, the clothes she wore. When in point of fact, we were much more concerned about relationships between the mother and the child.
But what sort of things did you say to the mother to try and affect this?
Well, I would say to her, never mind about what she wears. This is important in the long run, but it isn't important at the moment. The real important thing is that you've come to visit her, and that she feels that you care about her. At the moment, she doesn't think you care. And the more you talk about superficial things, like what she eats and the way she wears and the way she speaks, she is not likely to feel that you really care.
But how important did you feel was the need for the link between the mother and the child? I mean, did you really try hard to do this?
Oh, very. Well, it's absolutely essential. You see, here was a child who was likely to break away from contact and reject the mother altogether. She believed in her heart, subconsciously, that the mother had already rejected her. And if the truth be known, she probably had. And therefore it was, if we were to have any sort of future, we had to maintain this contact. But it wasn't easy, on either side.
Gail's mother went to her daughter's funeral, but for the last 15 months she hadn't even known where Gail was. She feels that people will blame her for the circumstances that led to her daughter's death more than any of the other factors, and she still finds it easy to believe that everybody else was to blame but her. And because it was not our purpose to apportion blame, we disguised the mother's identity in an interview when this film was first shown. But since then, she's decided she doesn't even want to be seen again, and we've respected that wish. She herself went to a public school, and she's quick to blame the children's homes for the life Gail later led. For by the time Gail was 11, she was so disturbed she needed the help of a special school. It was one of 14 institutions she was eventually moved on to. Almost all of her childhood was to be spent behind tall railings or high walls, even behind bars. Mary Evans, her head mistress at that first special school, had extraordinary patience. Gail once bombarded her with bricks. Her victim survived and overlooked the assault. The little girl was impressed, and after that, to the end of her life, she always wanted to look good in Mrs. Evans' eyes.
By the time she was about 13, 14, in school, I'm not talking about outside, she was presenting as a much more settled girl with some hope of making a career, and a girl who, instead of wanting a gun, as she did the first Christmas, suggested that I bought her something dainty, suitable for a girl, on her second Christmas. She'd made considerable strides.
But she was thinking about the future at that time.
She did think about the future.
And a career.
And a career.
What did she want to do then?
Well, she used to think about being an air hostess, not in the way girls do for the glamour, because she thought it would get her to America, and she might find her father if she went to America, because she thought her father was an American, and she wanted to find him. But in a more realistic way, she and I discussed her working with small children in children's homes, and we had a lot of interesting discussion about how she would treat them, what sort of an adult, what sort of a loving adult, and what sort of a controlling adult she would be.
Have a father of her own?
No, she's never known a father. In fact, apart from the odd house father whom she's met and one or two male figures in other establishments where she's been, I suppose I was the only constant male figure.
How important do you think you were to Gail?
Oh, I think I was very important, actually. She was ready to reject me from time to time, but there was never any doubts that I mattered and that what I had to say mattered. I had some influence with her.
But in the end, even you rejected her.
Oh, yes, we did, and to our shame.
But why did you do this?
Well, we did so because throughout the last period she was here, she was having a very unfortunate effect upon other children, and we saw other children going down in the process. And this is a very unhappy dilemma that anybody running an establishment has, but you have to choose. Sometimes between your need and understanding to help the individual and the effect the individual may have upon the group. And unhappily, we reached the point when Gail's influence on the group was unfortunate, to say the least, and very damaging. And unhappily, we had to choose, and we chose to reject her.
We arrived in this place very late, too late for lunch, and this girl and I had got into a reasonable frame of mind to go back, and on arrival, although she was courteously received, she was immediately whipped away and put into solitary confinement. And I was quite appalled about this, that this girl had been taken from me without ceremony, not roughly handled, but quite courteously and cold-bloodedly put into solitary confinement. And after I had taken tea very graciously with a most charming headmistress, whom I felt all the time didn't really subscribe to the system she'd inherited, she took me to say goodbye to Gail. And there she was, upstairs in an attic room, where there would have been no escape, with nothing in this room but a mattress on the floor and a bucket where she had to go to the toilet. And that was it. She was shut in that room with a mattress on the floor and a bucket, and that was her punishment.
A few months later, Gail was moved on again, this time to a mental hospital. She was placed in a ward with elderly, disturbed patients, though no one seems to know why. She ran away as fast as her young legs could carry her, back to Mrs. David's house.
For 1 whole week, this girl was here in the house, And neither the approved school nor the mental hospital would accept the responsibility for this girl. Both argued it was the others to remove her, and all the time she was here. Had I not been prepared to have her, she would have been at the mercy of whoever had, because no one ever on one occasion checked where she was or what kind of a setup she was in. In fact, when eventually a quite high-ranking Home Office official, at the request of the CID, instructed the mental hospital to collect her, they came down here and they said we had no idea what to expect at all. And in fact, they had come with a straitjacket prepared to have to remove her. And I was very indignant when they came to the door this day. It was 11 o'clock at night. And Gail had been sitting ready to leave since 10 in the morning. And I had packed sandwiches in a Tupperware box for her. And I said to her, now when they come, you put coffee out for them and receive them in a proper manner, which she did. And they couldn't believe that this was the girl they'd been sent to collect.
Where the rules are rigidly applied in isolated South Devon.
Dear Mrs. David, I hope you're keeping well as I am. I would have wrote before, but I wasn't allowed to. It's stricter here than it was at Knoll Hill. I'm only allowed to write to my mother, really, but as I don't write to her, they let me write to you, and I hope you will write back to me. But I'll quite understand if you don't. I can only write letters on a Sunday. I have been here 2 weeks and I haven't had any letters since I've been here. I'm only allowed 1 parcel a month, no matter how big or small it is. Give my love to the kids at school and Mr. and Mrs. Banner, and please explain that I would write to them if I could, but maybe when I've been here a little bit longer they may let me. There are 60 girls here and it's like a farm. I remember you once said I would do well on a farm. I think I will get on better here than I would have at Knoll Hill. It was too easy, really. I often think of the little kids in Beecholme. If you have some photos, could you please send me them? Loads of love, Gail.
Mrs. David visited her. It was here in hospital that Gail talked to us 10 months ago when we were making a program about the effects of institutional life. We didn't know then that Gail herself was right when she said that only death was left. During the time that you were in the children's homes, did you ever try to get in touch with your mother?
I don't think so. I don't know. I think I did, yeah. Once or twice.
Did you meet her in that time?
Yeah.
How did that work out?
Not very well.
Why not?
I just don't like her. I hate her. I dislike her.
You hate your mother?
Yeah.
Why is that, Gail?
She put me away in the first place.
When you were in one children's home after another, you were always running away from them.
Yeah.
Wanting to get out. What made you unhappy in children's homes, do you say?
You were just, like, when you went to school, you felt different from the other kids. Because you couldn't, you couldn't take your mates home for tea and that, could you? So there was too many other kids be out that way, And you used to have labels in your clothes. Like your coats and your jumpers. And the kids used to say, what's that, You felt odd. So in the end, I didn't like going to school. So I just used to run away.
But what about now? You left the children's homes. They need have nothing to do with you. But Mrs. David, the teacher, for instance, she still visits you.
I know.
What do you feel about that?
I don't know. She wants to come visit me. Don't know why.
Don't you care whether she comes or not?
Well, it's nice to have somebody come visit you, isn't it? I don't think I'd really care though if she come or not.
How have you been spending the last few months before you came into hospital for treatment?
Fixing.
Fixing? What does that mean?
Taking heroin.
How did you start on that?
When I was in Boston, they used to talk about it. And when I come out, I just thought I'd try.
Where were you living then?
No, yeah.
Or where did you sleep?
He used to sleep in the toilets during the day, and then just go down the club and dance at night.
You used to sleep in the toilet?
Yeah. Sit on the floor and go to sleep. Put your coat around you.
What's going to happen with you in the future, Gail?
Don't know.
Would you like to get married?
No. No.
Why not?
Don't fancy it.
You can't see anything to do other than take drugs?
No.
What's the point of it all?
It's no point, really.
Why do you do it?
Because I know myself sometimes.
Well, how will you live when you get out?
National assistance. Or you can con it, ask people for shilling. Soon works up to a lot.
Or beg for it?
Yeah.
You don't mind doing this?
No.
What kind of a state do you think you're in, Gail?
I don't think I'm in a state.
Are you happy the way you are?
Happy as I'll ever be.
What does that mean exactly?
Just happy as I'll ever be. Like it says.
Have you been happy in the past?
I must have been when I was younger.
What do you mean when you were younger?
Well, I must have been happy sometime. Can't be miserable all that.
Where do you think you're heading, Gail?
To die, I suppose.
To die?
Yeah.
But you're only 19. You have an IQ, they say, of 120.
Yeah, that's what they say. That's what they say.
And you're pretty.
You're awful.
Do you think you're going to die?
Yeah, I don't know that.
You don't mind dying?
No.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I don't really want to live.
The authorities found her a bed-sitter above a shop in sprawling South London, miles from anyone she knew. One night, under the influence of drugs, she couldn't have known what she was doing. She set fire to her clothing and the flat. So the landlady said she must go.
And one day I was aroused by the police to say that the flat had been found ablaze, and she in it. She'd been taken to King's College Hospital with multiple burns, none of which were severe. By the time I contacted the hospital, before 10 in the morning, she had discharged herself, against advice. And from that moment, she rang me twice. Each time she rang me during the night, about 3 in the morning. And the first time I answered the phone, said, "Is that Gail?" And she said, "Yes." "Where are you?" "I'm in the dilly, and I'm high." And I said, "Why didn't you ring me? You said you would. You could have come here to sleep." And she said, "I've taken enough from you. I should finish it this time."
And how long was that before she died?
That was the first time, was on the Tuesday. On Thursday of last week, she rang me again about midnight, and I said, "Where are you?" And she said, "It doesn't matter, and if you ask me again, I will ring off, because you might be trying to trace me." And I said to her, "How are you?" And she said, "Oh, I'm finished. I should be finished." And I said, "Well, come to Morden, and I will collect you. You needn't be finished." And she said, "No, but you will come to my funeral, won't you?" And I said, "Oh, I'll be pushing the daisies up when you have your funeral, Gail." And she said, "No, you won't. I'll be having my funeral soon. You will come, won't you?" And I thought she was just high, although I really knew she was very bad. I could tell she was very bad. And I didn't hear it. Then she ran off, and I didn't hear any more till the police told me she was dead on the Tuesday.
Janet thought she knew everything about Gail, but there was one thing she didn't learn about until after Gail's death.
I was very surprised when I knew Gail had mother. I'd come back one evening, and my brother said that my sister-in-law said, "Gail's mother and grandmother have just been in to you. I offered them in for a cup of tea because they were very shocked and upset."
And I says, oh, you're lying. I says, Gail, never had a mother. And he says, no, John, have you seen this woman? This woman is sorts, it was a mother, you know. And she says she'd just been down to the mortuary to see Gail, and so I says, that's funny. I says, Gail always told me she was an orphanage.
We should have had the means, either here or elsewhere within the service, to be able to help Gail without rejecting her. She desperately needed somebody who wasn't going to. And this means different kinds of provision.
She was, in fact, free to do as she liked when she left here.
Well, she wasn't free when she went to the approved school, but as she moved out into society and as she was discharged from the various institutions, from prison, from Boston and so on, yes, she was a free agent. And, in other words, she was free to kill herself. She was free to go on the dilly, she was free to go on the drugs, and short of stopping her in some way, she was free to die.
Are you saying that in a permissive society we must allow young people like Gail the right to kill themselves?
Well, this is a very difficult moral issue. You see, I think this is an issue of social policy. This is an issue of how far society is prepared to control people's movements in order to save themselves. I don't know. It's not an easy one to answer. One would say, for the sake of Gail, yes, we should have stopped her. But how? We could take her off drugs if we put her in prison. But if we put her in prison, we're merely teaching her to live in an enclosed institution. And maybe this is the only place in which she could have survived. I think it's a very difficult question to know whether society is prepared to control its deviant members, or whether in doing so we would not infringe a whole range of liberties which might be a danger to the total liberty of the subject. It's a very difficult question.
Here was a girl who had so much intelligence. She was a girl of so much quality. She was a girl who retained a capacity to love in all her despair, and who, when she was saying to us, I have destroyed myself, could still say to me at the end of December, but you loved me, didn't you? You didn't just like me, you loved me. Why? She was really still saying, oh, I might just have managed.
But need she have died?
It's very difficult to keep somebody alive who feels they haven't anything to live for. When she said to me in Charing Cross, after she'd said, I shan't be able to help small children now, I shall die soon if I go on like this, Evan, shan't I? And I said, yes, my love, you will. And she shrugged her shoulders and said, well, it doesn't matter, does it? And I said to her, well, you feel you haven't anybody really who wants you to live. And she said, that's it. And she hadn't anybody, Mr. Williamson.